either later this year or next year, we can do it in person. Bangkok is one of my favorite cities to travel to. I'm usually in Bangkok a couple times a year. So I really miss being there. I miss the good food. I miss the traffic, as crazy as it is. I miss, all of the crazy motorbikes, and can't wait to be back. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And jump right in. So I want to go over a couple things with you guys today as you're thinking about putting together your applications for graduate school or your PhD programs in the US. So there's a couple things in the application that you guys have a lot of control over. The first, of course, is your statement of purpose. Then the other is going to be your letter of recommendation a little bit. Of course, you can't write that letter of recommendation, but in picking who you have write that letter to best showcase you. So one of the big questions I always get is, where do you actually start in this whole process and how do you get going? So the first is understanding how the process works of a graduate application in the US. So the decision for your admission is not actually made by the admissions office. It's going to be made by the program director or the program committee. So the admissions office is somebody like me. I'm more than happy to make sure that you have your application and you're hitting the deadlines, that we have all of the documents we need. But once we get your entire application file, it's going to be sent to the program for review. Deadlines are going to be one of the most important things to pay attention to. The American culture, one of the things we're very well known for is our deadlines and being very, very strict about them. So generally, applications are not going to be accepted after a deadline, and so they need to be fully complete before the deadline, which means all of the documents, not just the application itself. One of the biggest pieces of advice I can give you about this step is to make sure that you either have a calendar or an Excel file, something that you can keep track of every deadline on. And then not only put that deadline on your calendar, but try to aim for at least 2 weeks before that to actually get all of your things submitted. That gives you a little bit of room in case something happens, like your letter of recommendation needs a little bit extra time or something like that. It gives you a little bit of a cushion in the process. Some other tips to think about, start reaching out to program directors and faculty early. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this on the next slide. But plan to start this process at least a year in advance. It takes a while to find the right programs for you. In the US alone, there are over 4,000 colleges and universities. So it's a lot to go through, a lot to think about. You have to think about, not only the type of program you want to be in and the type of research maybe you want to do, but also where in the US do you want to live? You could be in a program that's 4 or 5 years long. So you want to be somewhere that you're going to be happy living there. You're going to be excited about living there, excited about the city, the environment. For example, maybe you want to be somewhere with a lot of snow. So you think about living somewhere in the northern part of the US, or maybe you don't want to be around snow at all. So you look at the southern half of the US. So those are some of the things you have to think about. Have a project or research in mind, and it could be that you've started doing some research at your university level right now that you want to continue when you go to graduate school. You don't have to know exactly what it is that you want to do, but having some ideas of things that interest you are going to be important. Make sure as you look at different universities that you are reviewing the department research, their publications, their grants, their facilities. This is going to be very important in the next step when we talk about reaching out to faculty and program directors. Be aware of how they select for assistantships and grants. I'm sure one of the things that you guys might be looking for are either graduate or teaching assistantships. And sometimes these are going to have different deadlines than the application deadline itself. So make sure you're asking questions about assistantships and grants, when those deadlines are, and how you make sure you apply for those. And then one of the biggest tips on this page, I leave it for last because it's one of the things that I really want you to think about. A lot of students that I work with have the problem where you can be very shy and it's not necessarily part of your culture to try to sell yourself. But part of this process is being able to communicate with program directors and faculty about why you are the best choice when they're looking at all of these applications. So, especially as you're writing your essay or your statement of purpose, you have to be comfortable talking about yourself, the work that you've done, maybe the volunteering you've done, the research you've done. Do not be shy in this step. I know this can be very hard to do, but it's very, very important to make sure that you're really talking about yourself in the best way possible. So, some things that you're going to want to start doing initially. So, remember, I said plan about a year in advance. So, one of the things that you're going to want to start doing is thinking about, like I said, the type of research you might want to get involved in and start looking for faculty who might do similar research. These are going to be the faculty, especially where you end up going, who are going to be your mentors. So, you want to look for somebody who has similar passions to you, and that you are going to be excited to spend the next couple years learning from. As you research these institutions, as I said, do they offer the area of interest you're looking for? Do they have the faculty who share your interests? What are these projects that these faculty emphasize? This is a very difficult step of the process. So, as I said, there's over 4,000 universities and colleges in the US. And maybe you're in a program like biology. Biology is a massive field, right? I would say out of these 4,000 universities, probably 3,800 of them have biology departments as well. So, you have to think about exactly what it is that you want to do within your field and really start narrowing down your options through that. It is going to take a lot of time. So be prepared to set aside hours where you're just going to sit on Google, fall into one of those black holes where you think it's been 5 minutes, but it's really been 2 hours, and do those deep dives into looking at different institutions and what they focus on at their university. So, the next thing you're going to want to do after you identify a group of schools that you are interested in, you actually want to start reaching out to them. So, you're welcome to reach out to somebody like me as the admissions person to make sure you know what the deadlines are, what the expectations for the application are. But make sure that you actually also start reaching out to the program director and faculty in that department. Write to somebody who has the same academic interest as you. Keep the email short and sweet. It doesn't need to be an essay in itself. Keep it to no more than 4 sentences. Really, this is just kind of an introduction to who you are, and what you're interested in and why you're interested in that university. Keep it pretty professional. It doesn't have to be like a business letter. It could be personable, uh, but make sure that they understand that you are a serious candidate and you are looking for a serious program. Don't worry about attaching your CV or resume at this point. This step really is to build that bridge for you so you could learn more about that program or that professor. This is a great time to, as I said, think about maybe the research you want to be involved in, that you could actually introduce that to this faculty member or program director. Say, I'm looking for a program that offers the ability for me to do this research. I see that either you do this research or your department does this research. I'd like to learn more. What do you look for in a candidate for this program? Things like this. And then remember that you can ask about scholarships and fellowships and assistantships. These are not going to be guaranteed, though, in the program. These are going to be competitive, uh, but it's good that you're establishing these connections because that way, when the program director and these faculty are reviewing applications, when they see your application, they're going to remember your name and can connect it back to the conversations that you've already had with them to establish this bridge. So let's talk specifically now about the statement of purpose. Because this, like I said, is going to be the one piece of your application that you have full control over at this point. Because really, the rest of the items that you're going to submit, such as your transcripts, your grades are already done. You already have your grades. You might have to take exams. Once again, that score is already set. You can't control that. But your statement of purpose is something that you have full control over. So there's certain things that you want to make sure that you have in this. One, a strong statement of your goals. Why are you looking at this program in particular? Is it just for the research? Is it for also the academic environment, the culture of the university, the culture of the city, maybe? But make sure that these are very, very clear and strong. Make sure that you're telling the admissions committee who you are and why you're interested in this program. Don't worry about listing the things that are listed on your CV about why you're qualified. We're going to see that in a different part of your application. So don't spend your time on your statement of purpose focusing on things like that. Talk about your passions and your goals. Those are things that we're not going to see on your CV or other parts of the application. Make sure you explain why you value their academic program and what is something specifically in their program that you see as a great fit for you and what inspires you to want to apply to that program. And understand that this document that you're submitting is really your way to convince the selection committee of your achievements and why you're going to be successful in their program. So the parts of the actual statement of purpose that you're going to want to have are going to include the introduction. Once again, this doesn't have to be long, but you can be very clear to set out on what your goals are and why you're interested in that program specifically. Keep the background of yourself brief. Like I said, we can see this in other parts of your application. We'll read it on your CV or resume, or the application document itself where you fill out a lot of this basic information. We don't need you to list it again. It'll make your statement of purpose too long, and you'll probably lose readers throughout it. Make sure that you're being very clear about what your career objectives are. If you're using this program, for example, maybe you're applying for a master's level program with the ambitions to go on to a PhD program. Make sure you list something like that. Or if you're applying for a PhD program with the aspirations to become a professor or go into research or something like that, this is the best place to talk about this. The admissions committee wants to know what your plans are and how you're going to continue to be a good alumni for the institution afterwards. Make sure you mentioned something that sparked your interest about the program. This will show us a couple of things. One of the things that you're passionate about, but also that you've done your research on the institution and the program. So this is a great thing to mention at the beginning towards your introduction to say, as I was looking for this kind of research, I noticed that your university has already done research in this or is currently doing research in this. That got me very excited to apply so I can continue my research. Something like that. Make sure that whatever you're talking about is relevant to the program of study. I'm sure you guys could all tell me amazing stories about yourselves. But if it doesn't relate to what you want to study, why do I want to read it? So make sure that whatever you're telling me, it shows me what kind of a student you're going to be in this program. Have a specific research in mind. I know I've mentioned this many, many times, but this is once again the place that you're going to want to mention specifically what it is that you want to be involved in. And then talk about why this program is going to help you reach your goals. It shows us that you've researched the program heavily, that you know what you want to do with your career and your life and the next steps in your life. So they want to see that this is going to be a useful few years for you. Other things that you're going to want to make sure you include, do a short summary of your past academic experiences. You don't have to go into depth. Once again, we can see this on other parts of your application, but tell us specifically, very in one or two sentences, where you did your bachelor's degree, what field you did it in, and maybe if you did research, what that research was. If you did research and you include that in there, make sure that you include the title of the project and what your supervisor's information, responsibilities, and your outcome was. If you've written a thesis, this could also be something that you could have put there instead. So if you have a thesis project that you've completed, you could also put the title of that. Mention anything that's scholarly that may not be necessarily related to your class. So, for example, if you've done a project above and beyond, maybe some research or your thesis, this is a great place to talk about that. If you took what you learned in your undergraduate studies and applied it to either a work experience or volunteer experience, this is a great place to talk about that. Like I said at the beginning, one of the things that you have to be comfortable to doing and be ready to do is brag about yourself. You have to be very confident in talking about who you are and why you're the best person for this program. So this is that specific part where you have to be able to say, when I was doing my undergrad, these are the things that I did. This is the research I did or the thesis I did. This is the volunteer experience I had or the work experience. And this is why I am the best candidate for this program. So you have to be very comfortable being able to do that. So other things to think about, and don't forget your recent activities that you've participated in that help. These don't necessarily have to relate to your academics. So for example, if you have outside volunteer or work experience, you can talk about those. If they add to who you are and why you want to do this program, you can add this information. If you've already graduated and you're working, it's okay to talk about that. Just make sure to talk about the types of experiences that you've had. Talk about the responsibilities that you've had, even if it's a job that or volunteer activity that doesn't necessarily fit exactly with what you want to study. But if it has job responsibilities that are similar or overlapping, talk about those and what you've learned and how you can apply that to your graduate or PhD program. And then what other experiences have you had to help you prepare for your studies? These are great also things to start thinking about now to come up with topics to talk about. You can tell me a story or tell me about an experience, but it's best to think about how it relates to what you're going to be doing and what you want to do in the future with your career goals. So the main points to take away from this section is so much information and so much to wrap your mind around. So make sure you indicate what you wish to study or research in detail. Include your area of interest or research and make sure that you define this if you can. Um, Make sure that you've researched the department websites, the faculty, the program director, and make sure in your statement of purpose that you find a way to prove that you've done this research and that you know about the program and the faculty. If you're going to talk about one of your previous faculty members or advisors, make sure that you've let them know in case where you're applying reaches out to them. And then end it on a positive note. When I finish reading your statement of purpose, I want to walk away remembering who you are, something interesting about you, maybe the research you've did or what you want to do. Um, but I want to be able to feel that excitement and that passion from you and walk away with that happy feeling. So some additional tips, and these are kind of those housekeeping tips. Make sure you put your name on every page of your statement of purpose, just in case something gets lost in the file. It's the easiest way to make sure that we have everything we need. Make sure you're paying attention to the length that they ask you to keep it to. If there is no length given, then I say keep it to 500 to 1,000 words, which is really about 1 to 1.5 pages total. Do not write a 5-page paper. You don't want to write 5 pages. I don't want to read 5 pages. So make sure you're keeping it short and sweet. Keep your font at 11 or 12 1-inch margins. This is pretty standard in the US for how all papers are written. So you can practice it now with your statement of purpose, but know, especially in your graduate program, that's also going to be the expectation. Um, Make sure that you proofread. This is one of the most important things that people don't do often enough, I think. Uh, a lot of students say, "Oh, well, I proofread my paper. I didn't see, the squiggly red line under any words telling me anything was spelled incorrectly." But that doesn't mean that it's fully correct. Not only should you proofread it, make sure you have a faculty member proofread it, or an advisor, or a friend, or go to Education USA and have them proofread it. They are a great resource to helping make sure that your statement of purpose is clear, um, concise, and to the point of showing who you are and why you're passionate about this program. One of the best tips that I was ever given when I was at university about proofreading a paper, if I didn't have the ability to have somebody else proofread it, the way to make sure that when you're reading your own piece of writing, start at the end with the very last sentence. Read that sentence first and then keep working backwards throughout till you get back to the top. That way, when you're reading it backwards, you actually stop and think about what that sentence says. You make sure that it's grammatically correct, everything is spelled correctly before you move back to the previous sentence. It doesn't allow your brain to just kind of skim through it. So, if you don't have the ability to have somebody else help you proofread, that's one way you can help yourself. But if you're planning a year in advance and you're taking your time doing this, you'll have plenty of time to have somebody help you. So the letter of recommendation, I want to touch on this tonight as well, or this morning as well. This is very important, and you don't have as much control over this as you do your statement of purpose, but you do have a little bit of control over it. This is probably the second or third most important piece of your application because it's a person who knows you very well who's going to tell me about you as well. So you want somebody who can help brag about you, what you've done, your accomplishments, things like that. So, this is going to be the most supportive part to your statement of purpose. You have to have at least one faculty member or professor who's going to write this for you. And some graduate applications may ask that you have two letters of recommendation. If that's the case, then you absolutely need to make sure one is a faculty member. One could be a supervisor from a job, a volunteer experience, something like that, but make sure at least one of them is from a faculty member or professor. If you have other ones, they could be examples of project supervisor, an employer, a teammate, something like that. They need to be able to talk about some salient points uh, that really supports your statement of purpose. This is why it's great to have, a faculty member who knows you well, or if it's somebody who's helped you supervise your research or something like that, who can really speak to what your skills are in the classroom, in the research environment, things like that. But you want somebody who's going to be able to really mirror what you've said in your statement of purpose. So make sure, similar to what you wrote in your statement of purpose, that it has the introduction, it talks about why they want to recommend you. If they have a personal story that really shows who you are and your personality and your perseverance and qualifications, make sure that they include that. And make sure that there's a strong closing statement. Also, ask your recommender to keep this to one page. Once again, they don't need to write an essay. I don't want to read an essay. It just adds too much to your application, but it's great to have enough to really, really support your statement of purpose. So, some additional resources can be found on this page for different examples that you could look at for different statements. And what different universities are looking for. I will pass this presentation on to Education USA so they can pass it on to you guys. So you don't have to worry about trying to write these down right now. But as you're going through your statement of purpose and writing them, these are some great places to look back and double check that you're on the right page, that you know what you're looking at. Um, and that you can feel confident in what you're writing. So this is also my contact information. If you are writing your statement of purpose and you're just not quite sure about it or want somebody else to look through it, you can always reach out to me and I'm happy to help you as well. Um, this is, like I said, my email address. Don't hesitate to reach out. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen momentarily. And I'm going to bring up, I think you guys were provided previously uh, a couple, three different statement of purposes. And so I want to look through them with you. So this is the first one, and these are honestly three statement of purposes from graduate applicants to my university. Honestly, in the last 3 months, these are all international students or students from outside of the US who've had some interesting experiences. I will say these three statement of purposes, they're good. They're fine, but there's definitely improvements that could be made on them. So I want to look through them together so I can show you as I read through this some different things that I would suggest. So that way, when you're writing your statement of purpose, you can think back and think, okay, well, Megan said maybe don't do this or try it this way. So let's go through these together. So I think it starts out strong with a great anecdote of sudden changes in my world. I'm ready to make a change in my life. I think Creighton University has the tools to help me make these changes, help me expand my education, my life experiences, some experiences they had at their previous university. The thing that I start to get lost in, though, in this first paragraph is it starts to come off to me a little bit like a novel. I like some of the personal experiences, but this comes out a little bit strong for me. I like that they say that I'm confident Creighton has the tools to help me make these changes, but I think right there is where I want to start seeing already that they've done the research and can tell me specifically what it is about this program or my institution that's going to help them reach their goals. Um, I appreciate that they say that at their previous institution, they didn't quite get what they wanted. Um, it has taught them some things, but you have to be careful starting off with a negative tone. You really have to be able to wrap it around to end on a positive note. So let's see where this continues to go. The past spring, I struggled because they're more of a hands-on learner and they switched to remote learning. I think we've all felt this now in the last year with the change to virtual. So I like that this is something I can connect with them on. This person can easily adapt to situations when needed, uh, but this was draining. Um, they felt hopeless and lost in what to do. After self reflecting and talking to their family, they learned about this program at Creighton. He's from Ecuador. And once again, now he starts to still get lost in the story instead of telling me what it is specifically at Creighton that they think is really drawing them in. I appreciate that the mother went to Creighton. They love STEM. They knew they want a career in STEM. Uh, this is great. But once again, like I said, this is a fine essay. I appreciate the anecdotes, but there's not quite enough to show me exactly what it is about Creighton that's really drawing them into apply. Yes, they were introduced by their dad, their mom went to Creighton. Um, they're looking for a dynamic program, but what is it that they saw in their research about this program that made them feel like it was dynamic? So when I say to do the research and then show the research in your statement of purpose, that's what I'm saying. So yes, they say it's a dynamic program, but what in their research showed them that it was a dynamic program or stood out to them as being dynamic? Be very, very clear about this. They looked through what we had to offer. I see it's unique and beneficial. Once again, tell me what you think specifically is unique. So it's a good essay. I feel like I know a little bit about their background and their history, but it could have been a little deeper for me. Okay, let's go on to the second one. I started my wellness coaching journey after my parents were diagnosed with cancer. I had plans of going into speech pathology, found myself immersed in health and well-being, not only what they were eating, their nutrients, their treatments, uh, their medications, when they were taking them, how they were feeling. I like that they showed where they're coming from and their interest in this field. I think this is too long of an introduction. I understand from the beginning, the types of questions that they had, but we're going on about 4 or 5 lines of these questions about, what they were thinking about with their parents. I got the point from the first 2 lines. They didn't need to go into 5 lines. And I think this essay is almost 2 full pages, so a little long. So that's a place that they could have cut this out a little bit. And as you can see, their first paragraph is over a page long. When you are writing your introduction, keep it to 3 or 4 lines only, and then go to a new paragraph. Make it very, very clear what the introduction is. So I talk about these are a few of the questions that crossed my mind. My father's cancer returned. He was in the hospital. Then I fully grasped this field. They met a nurse named Jane. Uh, they're in Canada. The nurse was energetic. Um, Jane went back to school and was hired as a nurse. Okay, once again, I'm getting a little lost in the story and not so much about the student themselves. Um, I think it's great that I see where she's learning these passions from wanting to get into this field, but this is a little too much. It's timed after kind of that introduction and why you're passionate about this field to turn it around and talk about specifically what you want to do in this program. So I love that it shows that it led her to the health and wellness field, but didn't need to quite go into this much depth. They're applying for the Masters of Science in Integrative Health and Wellness, which is a really cool program. And it sounds like, given her background and what she's learned over the last couple of years, she, could be a good fit. She wants to work with people who devote their lives to others, especially when it comes to that burnout and mental fatigue. So I understand the importance of this field. It's great that she clearly states my goal. My goal is to create health and wellness programs that help individuals in reaching their physical health, wellness, and mental health goals. I love that it's a very straightforward goal, so the program committee can see that. I'm a believer that there's space in this field for health and wellness. Another reason I'm applying for this program is that I want to be equipped with the skills and strategies to help others. So I think this paragraph in particular is very strong. It says exactly what her goal is, why she's applying for this program, and what she hopes to do afterwards. I love that it definitely shows her passion and where she wants to go. Like I said, I just think it took a little too long to get here. Talking about her personal philosophy, I think this is an interesting choice. This is something that I might have put in a letter or an email to the program director or a faculty member, not necessarily put it in the statement of purpose. But I like that she, is able to turn it around in some way to talk about where she wants to go in the future. That can use it, health and wellness to support mental health. Um, you know, I think it's a great way, like I said, to look at the future. But I think it could have been a stronger ending about what specifically her goals in this program are going to help her do in the long term. And then the third one. So this one I thought was very, very interesting. It's not often that I see a statement of purpose that's written in a bullet point fashion. It's not wrong, it's just different. I do like that it's very easy to read. The life goals, well, the purpose at the top is a great way to start off by saying, this is what I want to do. It goes right into the life goals long term, the goals over the next 3 years, and specifically why this program. It talks about everything that we talked about in the presentation about the things that the essay should have. Kept it to a page and a half. They're looking to apply to the Masters of Christian Spirituality program. Very, very, very straightforward. Like I said, it's not wrong. If this is a great way for you to be able to clarify your thoughts and make sure you're hitting every part of what we've talked about, then I think you should absolutely go for it. I also think that if you want it to be more of an essay style, this is one way that you could start and really get a good rough draft of what you want to make sure you include, and then turn this into more of an essay style. So 3 very different statements of purpose. I think, like I said, they were all good, but they could have been a little better. And I hope looking through them with me, you guys can see where I'm saying, this is a great place to specifically state what your goal is for the program, what you want to do after the program, and the type of information we're really, really going to be looking for. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And like I said, I will follow up and make sure you guys have a copy of this PowerPoint to everybody who registered for this session. I know we went through things pretty quickly, and I do have a tendency to talk fast when I'm excited about something, but I do think we have a couple minutes now for question and answer. If there's a way for you guys to be able to do a Q&A, I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Okay, if anybody have a questions, you can type on chat box or you can raise your hand and then ask question directly to Megan.
Hi, Megan. May I ask questions on behalf of the student from Education USA Thailand page, Facebook page? Um,
Absolutely.
Thank you. So we have been receiving a lot of questions from students through Facebook asking whether or not grammar is important for
Mm.
statement of purpose. If the student is not good in grammar and they already have like asked other people to review, but still it's not perfect, would you consider grammar is like the main point of, you know, the the overall statement of purpose? Thank
That's a
you.
great question. So we do look at grammar. Grammar is going to be very important. However, we also understand that for international students, English is your second or third or fourth language. So if there's one or two mistakes, it's going to be okay. We understand that. What I expect, and I think what most programs are going to expect, is that you proofread it, you have somebody proofread it, you work with Education USA to proofread it. But if there still ends up being one or two mistakes, it's not going to be the end of the world.
Thank you. So you would say that the content is the most that is matter, right? The main content.
Correct. Like I said, we really want to see who you are, what your passion is, what your goals are, as clearly as possible through your statement of purpose.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions from the student? Okay, so we have a representative of our students would like to um, thank you, express the thank you to Megan. So can I have the representative of the student share something from this workshop?
On behalf of Walailak University students, thank you so much for sharing us this knowledge. It's really, really helpful, and I am sure that we can apply this to our future career. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me and for being a great audience this morning. I hope you guys found some useful information. And like I said, if you have any questions or need anything, you can always send me an email and I'd be happy to help answer any of those questions for you guys.
Good morning, and on behalf of the U.S. Embassy, I just want to say thank you to Megan for all of your insight today. I hope that all of the students found it very informative and interesting and gain a little confidence in going forward with their applications. To Director Janya and Kun Sukanlaya, I want to thank you so much for organizing this. Education USA does a lot of different types of programming, whether it's general education or these types of skill-specific workshops to sort of let people know more about different aspects of the application process. So if any students are looking at different opportunities in the United States, I would encourage you to reach out to Education USA and keep up on the programming, because they have so many different types of outreach. I know this is our second program, recent program, with Walailak University. And I know that all of you have just bright futures, and we're so excited that you're considering studying in the US. So thank you so much for being here today.
Okay, so on behalf of Walailak University and Center for International Affairs, I would like to thank you again, Megan, for your time. And I know now it's very late at America. And thank you, the United States Embassy in Bangkok, Education USA, and Creighton University for organizing this event with us. And we hope that we can have in the future another event together. Thank you very much. ขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
ค่ะ